Hey everybody, thanks for checking out another video. So, the time's come already. The big news, I've gotten the invite, the GPT-4 invite. So in my last video, I was still using 3.5, but I'd set everything up to do it with my chatbot, and now I want to kind of show how I've set up the API and how I'm working with it, some of the things I've figured out, some of my code, and just kind of empower people to see how to do it themselves if they're interested. So let's check it out. Let's just jump right in and kind of dig into the info here. So last video I showed GPT-4, it's out. It's better than 3.5 in a lot of ways. It can pass all your tests for you, that kind of thing. There's currently access, a little bit of access if you've got Chat GPT Plus, which I don't have because I'm cheap. But I did link my credit card to the billing on the idea that 1,000 tokens were like a cent or like a millionth of a cent. Like a million tokens was $2, I think. And I thought, okay, that's all right. But if you see here in the API, so for the GPT-4 that we're going to be testing today, it's a little pricier, so you see here they talk about it. Once you have access, so one of the things that's disappointing so far, right off the bat, is that GPT-4 has been kind of mentioned as this multimodal thing, but the access that I have is not multimodal, being like text and some other medium like image or video, that kind of thing. And I would love to do that. I've been working on a way with the HuggingFace API, the other API, the non-OpenAI one, to be able to add images, but I haven't been able to combine an image and text, and unfortunately I still can't do that, but that's a cool use case I want to be able to do. And then as far as like the cost, this is another interesting piece, is where they're talking about like prompt versus some other kind of prompt token versus a completion token. And this is on the 32K model. This is another thing to be aware of. Let's just dig into that part too. But yeah, so this is the pricing basically. It's a lot more actually than the other one. But I've heard it's better, so let's check it out. And a lot more is still relative. Like, let's say if 1,000 tokens is typically a couple messages, at least a couple back and forths, that's 3 cents. That's not that much, but it adds up. And we'll get into that. So here's the waiting list just for other people that are interested. You should sign up. I was able to kind of get my access within a few days. I don't know if I had a good use case. I got lucky, whatever it happens to be, but we're in, and we're going to check it out. So talking about the models here, they talk about it a little bit. This is all open in their documentation. They talk about the GPT-4 already. 8,000 token maximum currently, which is pretty much what the other one I think was, or it's double what the other one had. Same training data date on cutoff. And then, yeah, there's also this 32K model, which is a little more expensive, but it has actually quite a bit more tokens. And I think these are going to be interesting use cases for people where they could do like some massive dump of data and give it a lot more context. Because that's an important piece here that I want to talk about too with using these APIs and not doing the fine tuning. Is you've kind of got this model, and then you can kind of preload it with a little bit of context in the same way that someone could come to you and you could say, hey, I got some information for you. I want to tell you a story, and then you can kind of do the bit. You set them up. You give them the information. Versus the fine tuning where you're almost like teaching them. You train them, and they inherently know some more information. So the ability to kind of load more context in is going to be important for people that have like big jobs. Part of that issue is that I'm actually having trouble with finding use cases. We'll get into that in a moment here, just because I mean, it's hard, like I think what I'm doing first here, and I'm happy to do it, is I'm just gonna put it all together first. Like, let's just start sticking things together, like playing with Legos. I don't know what I'm making. I don't know what I even can make with this pile of Legos, but there's these Legos in front of me. Let's just start putting them together. So they talk about the chat completion API here. Can zoom in a little bit. They mention GPT-4 here as well. And here's kind of the format that you do. So typically you send a system message at the start that kind of sets it up. The basic one that I had earlier was you are a helpful assistant. I'll show in a few tabs from now that I found a better, like an OpenAI cookbook from OpenAI, where they kind of have some better suggestions that I think will save me some money. I'm a little cheap, I don't want it to elaborate too much, basically. And then you do the back and forth here, the user message, the assistant message, assistant being the bot. So the user message, if you're making a chatbot or if you want to send things, these user pieces are kind of where you input your piece typically. And if you're the one setting up these sending and receiving of the data, you might also be setting up the system prompt as well. But the assistant content is the stuff that's coming from OpenAI in this case, or whatever the model basically. And they also talk about the response format. The only piece that really matters here is this content. You can get multiple responses, but it's just going to cost you, so I typically just do one. And then all these tokens are considered what your usage is. Once we do a few prompts, we'll take a peek at my usage and see what we get, if it updates fast enough. But that's the basics for using it. It's actually pretty typical API that most people who've used APIs would be used to. And there's also a little piece of information here where they talk about the settings, and you can kind of figure out what some of the defaults are. Because one important piece here is that I want to try to tweak this temperature possibly as well, if I remember to in this video. Sometimes I want to do things and I don't get to them, but tweaking the temperature I've heard is an interesting thing, so hopefully we can give that a shot. And one other thing, going back to this page here, they talk about chat versus completions. That's another thing that I've kind of been learning as I've been going. I'm also going to take a sip of my Coke here. Is that there's the kind of like the chat / conversational models and the text completion models. And with the text completion model, you're kind of doing more setup where you're like, here's a whole bunch of story, finish this next piece as if you had already written it, or as if there was already a script and I'm just giving you little bits of it and making you fill it in. Versus these chat / conversational ones, which I've used with HuggingFace and which also GPT-4 and 3.5 seem to use, where you have a much more back and forth, where you go, this is one message, that's the next message, and it's more like that instead of just like, hey, let's fill in a script or complete text, basically. And they talk about it here, how the GPT 3.5, it's basically cheaper and essentially better at the task. So they suggest that rather than using text completion, you essentially move over to the chat and the conversational piece, and you tweak the way that you do the conversation to kind of complete the text the same way that it was going before. Because a lot of people were using text completion like the conversational way anyways. I mean, I'm making up that, but that's my backstory concept for how it probably worked. So there's some other settings here you can tweak. I'm not going to tweak too many of them, but you can tweak temperature. They suggest temperature or top P. I mean, if you're messing with this stuff, you got to be reading this. If you mess with this and you go, Dustin, I changed the top P and it's not what I expected, it's like, dude, I haven't even changed the top P yet, so good luck. And talking about changing stuff, so there's this playground that you can play with. My video is cutting off. Let me zoom in here. There we go. Now you can see it here. This little... Oh, now it says mode, though. It's supposed to say mode. Okay, there's mode and there's model. That's a little confusing. So you set the mode to chat, and then you can set the model, in my case, to having GPT-4. And the people that aren't yet off the waiting list would have like 3.5 turbo. And you can see some of the other ones here. These are just pegged to specific versions. So if you pick GPT-4 and they become a new version comes out, you might want to stick to the old version. Sometimes people don't like the way it changes. And the mode here is where I'm talking about chat versus text completion. You can kind of see this icon explains it all. So you have a little bit of text and the ... is fill it in versus having a dialogue. And then if we go to the complete ones, these are the ones that people had been using months ago before the GPT stuff came out, like the DaVinci 3, that kind of thing. And they're GPT-3 models, but they're not the same as these chat conversational ones in some ways. And you see here the playground here kind of gives you more control. Like, you get that adjusted temperature, but you can also change the top P, the max length, these things. You can change all that with the API as well. But it's cool to be able to do it in the playground. It still costs you tokens, or it still costs you the usage of tokens, so you still pay money. So for that reason, I want to do it in my bot, my AI chatbot. And on that note, let's introduce it. I'm currently running on my dev environment, so it's localhost here, but it's the same as dustinbrett.com. But we're going to tweak the temperature and stuff, and I don't have config settings for that. So we'll go back to localhost here for a little bit. But you can check out dustinbrett.com, and it does a lot of the same things. Well, so if we open up here the AI chat, we basically have my little chatbot here. And I've got this directly hooked into the APIs for OpenAI and for HuggingFace. And by default, if you just load the page, you're visiting my site, you're going to get the HuggingFace one without an API key. And the reason that I do that is because it's free, it doesn't cost me anything. And the usage is kind of on your IP address. But you can still do some kind of chat. So it's like, hey, how is it going? And this is talking to one of the HuggingFace text chat models that's not too bright. It's not a chat GPT 3 or 5 kind of thing. 4, I mean. 3.5 or a 4 is what I meant to say there. But it's still decently smart for the most part. But what we're going to do is we're going to switch the... Actually, I want to demo a few things that this can do that the OpenAI one can't, because like I say, where I want to do multimodal, I've already set up some stuff. So if you go to my folder here and pictures, I can go to my wedding photos here. And one cool thing I've set up, so let's take my photo here. This is a picture of me. And I've actually got it where you can drag things into text, and it'll add this little command, identify. And identify is not supported by the OpenAI one, but that's where you can kind of give it an image, and it will identify it. And it's actually really quickly, I think it's because this one's cached. I don't know what the Arafet is. This is, again, where it's not good. The HuggingFace ones are not nearly as good as the OpenAI ones from what I've seen. Let's try another picture, though, that it hasn't seen before. This is me and my wife leaving the church. Or let's do this one, crossing the road here. So let's see if it identifies this one. So the idea behind this is what I would want with the GPT-4 multimodal model is I could drag that picture on and don't just tell me something about the scene. I want to ask questions about it, you know? Where is this? Are they happy? That kind of thing. So what does it say here? Bride and groom walking down the street in a city. Pretty good from that there. So that's pretty cool, and that's with a totally free model. So now what we're going to do, or actually I have one other demo we can do. This one is something I do support with OpenAI, which is Draw. And Draw is like the ability to do the AI art images. When we're doing it with HuggingFace, it uses Stable Diffusion 2.1 model. And I'll do a drawing here just as an example. But when we switch to OpenAI, again, it's going to cost some money. And it's going to use DALL-E 2, which is another really good one. A third one that I've seen getting really good is Midjourney. Oh, that's cool. So the teddy bear one's pretty good, a photo of a teddy bear. And I actually have it auto-save too. So if you go to pictures, it makes an AI images folder, and it'll actually save the teddy bear one so you can use it as well. And I have another feature with it too where you can set wallpapers. So we'll do these with the Stable Diffusion, and we'll do with DALL-E in a little bit later once we switch to the OpenAI model. But it's another cool feature, and this is kind of the first meta feature, is this wallpaper feature where I've thought, okay, how can I go from the chat AI to into the OS? I mean, I guess the identifying the image is another one. So I've already thought of 2 use cases. So you see here, I have it told it to set the wallpaper, and it made like an astronaut wallpaper. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I'm trying to think of a ton of other use cases. So these kind of cool use cases plus a smart model, I think, will just be like a super winning combination, basically. And yeah, so let's get into the part where we have a smart chat model, because we still have the dumb chat model here. I mean, not dumb, but it's not as good. So I can be like, hey, was that picture nice? And it's probably going to give some generic answer. I find that these models that aren't the GPT ones, they're just not human-like. Like, what does it say? Yes, it was. Does it even know what it's talking about? It was the first time I saw one in person. I was so excited. Yeah, like I don't know what it's talking about. But we'll see when we try this with GPT-4. I think it's going to be a little bit better at making stuff up. I hope, That's one of my hopes that I haven't tried a lot of it here, actually, because I'm stingy with my money, so I'm saving my tokens for the video here. So let's switch the API. Let's switch out the API key right now. So I'm going to just set it right in the video, and then after this video, I'm going to have to delete my API key, which is fine. So I've saved it. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to double check. I'm going to reset this too. Oops, if I reset it, then I got to do the session again. Let me reset this here. So there we go. So we update the API key, we refresh. I'm going to double check that it's on there. Yeah, it's in there. So now let's open up the AI chat again, and now we should be talking to the OpenAI model. Nice. So for the OpenAI model, wait a minute. Oh yeah, it is. Hello. Yeah, that's the message it should show. But I wanted to talk now about the system message before we talk to the AI. So at the part where I've opened it here, I just have it show a generic greeting. It actually hasn't started any communication yet, so we won't see anything on the network here relevant to OpenAI. But that's where we want to get into that system message. So if you remember here, when you have that communication, one of the first things you can do is that system message to set it up. In this example here, you're a helpful assistant that translates English to French. So you set it up to kind of be a translate bot or whatever. So in my case, what I wanted to do, I've looked through this little cookbook here, and this is from OpenAI's OpenAI Cookbooks, How to Format Inputs to ChatGPT, updated a couple weeks ago. It doesn't talk about ChatGPT-4, but it does talk about system messages, and it has some cool examples, and it kind of just talks about the flow of how to communicate with these GPT models. So I think in that way, it's actually probably one of the best documents I've found. And then as far as system messages go, this one is one of the ones I decided to go with, and I had to look up this word. You are a laconic assistant. You reply with brief, to-the-point answers with no elaboration. So I didn't know what the word laconic is, but it's like of a person's speech or style of writing using very few words. So basically, I'm trying to set it up to be like, hey, really do as minimum as words possible, because I'm paying by the word, basically, by the token, which is typically almost like a word. Not always, though. So that's the one I decided to in this case. They've gone with temperature 0. I think I've hard-coded right now temperature. We'll go to the code in 1 second, but I've got a temperature hard-coded in there. And there's just a few other examples here. I think this is definitely worth a look. Mostly what I've gotten out of it is the system message, but I think it's an interesting learning. There's not a ton of documentation so far about it. I've seen on OpenAI's one thing, they have 2 coming soons that are like pretty interesting if you want to make a chatbot where they don't have the tutorials yet. So this is my chatbot. Just looking at the code, I've kind of committed it to GitHub already. This is the part that's kind of just like the UI piece in which I handle the how it shows the text messages like it's pretend typing at a certain speed, the back and forth of which message is on which side, the coloring, the commands, the basic stuff like that. You can customize this however you want. I mean, it's just an input box and some, it's as basic as can be if you want it to be. What I've tried to do is I've tried to take like Bing Chat, ChatGPT, Facebook Messenger, like all my favorite chat clients, and just take little pieces like, oh, I like the rounded corners in this one. I like the blue in that one. I like this button, but with this color, but fades that way. And when you type it, it does this effect, So I've tried to balance it out, and it's kind of always a work in progress. And I need to find the ability to configure it somewhere because there's a lot of cool config options that I want to get into where we could do mixing and matching of models, of changing of settings, and it's very rigid right now the way I've got it coded. You can see here I've got the commands like the draw one, and it's pretty simple so far, but this is where it's kind of been cool where I've been learning. Like I saw there was this one library, I don't have a link to it right now, called LangChain, where it talks about like almost like the new way of programming where you have to talk to these language models but chain it together to do functional things. And where I've noticed where I think that's going to be useful is not only with the chat piece, but also with like categorization. We'll test one prompt that I've set up where basically almost, and this is where I want to get into also running a local AI at some point just to save money, is I want to do more requests. Like when someone sends me one message, I want the AI to be like, I want to ask it like 10 questions. Like, did he mean this? Could it mean that? Summarize this, because I need the AI to give me very simple answers that I can use programmatically to do other things, So I have to kind of narrow down like, okay, based on the user saying this, can you tell me, was it this category? And then it can be tricky basically because I mean, that's this game that I'm learning how to play that I think a lot of programmers that aren't in the machine learning space, people like web developers like me that want to get into these inference engines and inference APIs is like, how do you go from natural language to actually things happening, and it's a lot of this chaining of events and this back and forth and this in the background communication. And it's something that I'm having fun with doing in the front end because I just love doing things in the front end. It's also why I had to put the API key in here. Typically, you'd have a server, and in the future, I might have a server. This computer here can actually run a little bit. Today, let's jump ahead here just quickly. Today I was running this model, the Alpaca model, which was trained on GPT 3.5, and this is kind of the latest and greatest where people are saying this will be able to run on just a basic computer. Like this is not actually a good computer. It's my old computer. It doesn't even have a video card, just on the CPU. And it could probably serve 2 users at the same speed that we're seeing my ChatGPT serve. I mean, obviously that's not a lot of people. Maybe if this computer was like, could be quite a bit more powerful, it could do more. But that's where I want to run it local because I don't want to be cheap with my tokens. I want to abuse the system and really get the most out of this inference, as they're calling it. So that's where these basic cookbooks can help a little bit. And then jumping back here, here's the OpenAI piece where I talk about some of the settings that I've done. So I've set the conversational model to the GPT-4 model now. I've set my temperature to be 0.8. I saw the default was 1, but they were even saying 0.8 was a little high and maybe could be considered getting randomness. And that lower, like 0.5, was considered less random. So I felt like defaulting to 1 was not necessarily ideal. I don't know. I haven't figured out what ChatGPT's exact signals are. It would be cool to know exactly what their settings are so I could get as close as possible to like a ChatGPT type thing. You can see here's my system prompt, and then I have that generic message they show at the start. That gets added in when I send the messages. It'll pretend like, oh, the AI has already said this, basically. And then the bread and butter of the command here is just this fetch command here, where I just tell the browser, send the request to OpenAPI. Here's the basic body in which it starts with a system message, all the messages that have existed since, and the new message that the user just wrote. And that's really all there is to it for the most part. So yeah, let's just get into it. I also have that the DALL-E 2 one, which we'll show as well. And then here's my usage here. It's been going down, but it's been very minor. As you see today, I have no usage at all. So let's start asking it some questions because I'm interested in testing it. I had some prompts. Let's just start out with just the basic stuff. We're gonna use some prompt juice here and just say, hello, I heard you are a smart model. Is that true? I wonder if it's gonna be too succinct now. Yes, I am. Oh man, maybe I've made it too brief. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. I guess this is the fine tuning. This is like a prompt engineering, that kind of thing. There actually is something. There is an art to it. I mean, this is where another thing that I found weird is like every model is so different. It's like, do I want to hard code in like prompt logic or be like, this works best on this model that was trained on this day? It's a little annoying because it's like if a new model comes along that's better in some way, I have to kind of change all my prompts possibly, which I'd rather not. I'd rather just be able to write them in this natural language. But I guess we're still not quite there yet, I would say, from a programmatic point of view. From a person coming and walking and talking to the thing, I think it's pretty good. So let's try one of these prompts that I had prepared. I have a big one prepared here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up another chat window. In the same way that ChatGPT can do threads, I can actually essentially, I think, do the same thing by just opening more of these windows. So let's just open up another one. And I'm going to dump in my message here. So I'll start with, first I'll put the small piece of it in. So I want to start with my blog post. So I have this blog post right here, this one here. I copied all the text and I say, here's my blog post that I just wrote. And I basically want it to write another blog post. And oops. Right. That's another feature I haven't added now that I think about it. So when I press Shift Enter, I was expecting to be able to enter a new line, but I haven't added that feature yet. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy and paste the entire thing and paste it all in at once. Please share the content. Oh, there. So this is a GPT-4 being good. So I didn't put in a lot, and I thought it's going to do something silly maybe, but it's just like, okay, give me the content. So here's my recent blog post. So let's just give it the blog post and make this a conversation then. I'm going to dump the whole blog post in here, like so. Pretty big. I hope it can take it all. Actually, here, now we can look at the communication too at the same time, although maybe this is a bad example. Actually, yeah, let's just do it. So here's the blog post, and we're just going to see if it sent it all. Presumably it did. So here's the OpenAI payload. Yeah, it posted it. It sent, yeah, it sent the whole payload with this message here and this, where's my user message here? Yeah, there's my massive user message. Yep, that's it. And what's the response we got? Blog summary. Oh, it did a summary on me. Triennial post, second daughter, born, family pandemic experience, 7th wedding anniversary. All of this stuff is super accurate. So there's right there a great summary. I didn't even want a summary. But now let's get to the final piece that I did want. Write my next blog post in my style. This is the cool piece that I thought would be kind of neat. And just to keep looking at this API call here, you can see here that it made the call. The model was the GPT-4 model, or the response. And it's got the information here, the message in there where it said the blog summary. And it summarized what the response was. You can prettyify it here to actually look at the whole thing. There's that message there. And yeah, now let's clear that and let's do this next one here where I say write my next blog post. And because I have this little memory on a per window basis, it's going to keep the context in the same way that ChatGPT does. But the only reason it's keeping that context is because I'm resending everything every time. So to do this next follow-up question is like as costly as the last one plus more, basically. And that's the game with prompt engineering that I found a little worrisome. I've almost thought one interesting idea would be to take the previous messages and have it like summarize those. Like every few messages take everything that I just have been saying and write that as a summary and just keep summarizing. Almost in the same way that you do in your mind a little bit where you forget stuff and then you come back and it's jog your memory a little bit with a little summary. It's like you don't remember the whole book. You remember some parts of it. So it's writing my next blog post in my style. It's doing a pretty good job so far. Triennial blog post. Although, wait a minute. Oh, man, it's so succinct again. I think I have to change that prompt. I want it to be a helpful assistant again. I don't want it to be quite so quiet. I mean, we got a nice short one again here, but I personally would not write a blog post like that. Not in that style. I mean, it's cool. It wrote some interesting stuff. I don't have 5,000 subscribers. I'm not a senior software engineer yet. I guess this is my next post. I didn't tell it to give me a date on this. Let's have it say that. When do you think this will happen? If my last blog post was in September 2022. And this is where you have that good back and forth. But again, though, I remember we're sending a lot of context, so I'm probably going to end this conversation real quick. The triennial blog post would likely be written in September 2025. Oh, well, yeah. Well, I guess, is that the triennialness? Cool. So in September 2025, I'll have 5,000 subs and be senior software dev 2 years from now. Actually, that is a little pessimistic, if anything. I'm a bit more optimistic than that. So, oh well. Let's change that system message. I think it's a little too extreme. So I'm just going to quickly do this in the background. Actually, at the same time that let's close these two windows here. Oh, what happens when I close it? I guess I found a bug there. Oh yeah, I just started doing this. I guess I haven't closed a window yet. Anyways, that's not important because that is not a production bug. Let's reset that, open that up. We got OpenAI again here. If we go back to the cookbook, I think this original message was probably good enough. You are a helpful assistant. I'd rather it be a helpful assistant than, what did I have it here? The lethargic one, laconic assistant. What's this one? You're a friendly, helpful teaching assistant. Let's just stick with you're a helpful assistant. I don't need it to be. If it's helpful, I would consider it friendly typically. I'm gonna change it here quickly in the background because I don't want it to be quite so laconic, as we call it, or laconic. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Okay, so I'm refreshing this. I've set it to be not the way it was before. And let's try a different prompt because these prompts cost a lot of money. So the next prompt I wanted to do, again, we have that problem where it's not going to do my new lines. So I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to paste again with the whole thing. So I want to give a one. This is where I wanted to talk about the categorization and trying to do programmatic responses. So I want to say give a one-word response to, and this will be tricky because I just stopped it from being this laconic brief, and now I'm asking it for one-word responses. Kind of silly. And that might be also why in the background you would want to have a completely different conversation in which the system prompt goes back to being this brief laconic thing, or however you pronounce that. And then you're going to get that one-word response without having to say, hey, give me a one-word response, because it should already be in the system. Anyways, so first we got to think of what the request is going to be. Well, basically what I want to do is I want it to be so that when any user comes on and just says anything generic, some kind of generic, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, I can ask the chatbot based on what he said, or he or she said, whoever said it, give me the command, give me the next thing. Is it just continuing the conversation? Did they want to draw a picture? Whatever it happens to be. So let's think, what would the command be? Let's do the draw picture one. Let's just say, hey, I want to draw a picture. Or no, let's say, hey, can you draw me a picture of goats? So if I wanted to do that command style, I'd be like draw goats, basically. But what we're going to do is, hey, can you draw me a picture of goats? And the idea there would be that if the chat GPT can come back and programmatically tell me he wants a drawing and it's of this thing, then I could even take the thing and pass that into a special prompt that does a better drawing, in which instead of just saying goats, you say like high quality goats that have this or that, or whatever it happens to be to make the picture better. But let's try this out. So that's what that's going to be. So I'm going to put that into my special prompt here, and then we'll take a look at the whole thing. So my idea for the whole prompt here is give a one-word response to which the command, what is it here? Give a one-word response to which command the following text belongs to. So the text being, hey, can you draw me a picture of goats? And then I say the commands are, maybe I should put these with lines. Wallpaper, draw, identify. These are the commands I have actually. Summarize, translate, and then what I'm calling chat, which I says is discuss anything not listed in the above. Okay, so let's see. So ideally what I'm going to get is one of these 6 words on the assumption that the user would have typed, hey, can you draw me a picture of goats? Let's see. What do we got? Draw. There we go. So there's some cool little categorization. And then let's say that maybe the way I worded this would have given it to me like draw, and then I ask for like a separator, and then I ask for what the thing they wanted. But as a test, we can just see, and that I'm sure that GPT-4 is going to know what they wanted. What did they want to draw? Goats. They wanted to draw a picture of goats. And I probably could have said, like, again, the one word, or if the system had been this laconic one, it would have been easier. So let's try that. So let's say draw. Actually, no, but I don't want to draw goats. Let's just try just for a fun test, let's try the prompt of drawing whatever it is we drew last time. Because the drawings, I actually do have the text. So when I say draw a photo of a teddy bear on a skateboard in Times Square, I do take the text piece and put that into the message as if I said that to the bot. So we'll do the drawing, and then we'll ask it about the drawing. But the thing is, because it's not multimodal, I can't feed the drawing back in to have it actually know what the drawing looks like, to give legitimate comments about it. So I can ask it to draw it. I can draw it with DALL-E too. But because it's not yet multimodal, this GPT-4, I can't feed it back in. So that drawing does not look much better than Stable Diffusion 2.1's, first of all. But whatever. So let's comment on it now. This picture looks great. What do you think? Presumably because it doesn't know about the picture, it's going to be honest and tell me it doesn't know. But I guess we'll see if it tries to like fake me out. And this is changing topics too from earlier. What is it saying? As an AI language model, I'm unable to see or evaluate images. However, I'm glad to hear that you think the picture looks great. If you have any, so there you go. So it can evaluate images, and that's a limitation that is, I think it's built into our API. I mean, I think based on the demonstrations I've seen, the GPT-4 model can do it, but we're not there yet. And the model, when you ask it about things it can do, it typically doesn't say what it can do. So that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's still, to me, it's still pretty good. And to me, it responds a lot like the ChatGPT. Like, let's open up one more here. I had one other prompt, and I've done a million of these prompts because I'm always asking it about titles for my videos. So let's just try one here. Give me ideas. Give me ideas for titles. Oh man, I wrote this. I butchered this when I wrote it. Give me title ideas for a new YouTube video I'm making where I discuss making an AI chatbot connecting it to GPT-4. So like I asked the ChatGPT that I have now, the free one that's on 3.5 presumably, I ask that all the time. I've never asked version 4, so let's see what kind of stuff we get. And we put it back to being a helpful assistant, so presumably it's just going to be helpful again. And we can see here. It's a little slow. And this is another thing, too, that I was going to note is that I haven't done it. The API supports the ability to do the server-side streaming of events where you can kind of send the tokens as they come. And I don't think it saves you any money, but I think you can get it faster. I think as it's generating the tokens, it can kind of send them in these little server events that you can pick up client side. And I'm going to look into supporting that because I've never messed with server events, but it sounds cool. And it'd be nice to have. I still like my way of doing it where I do typing versus if you look at ChatGPT, the way it puts the words, I think it does it token by token based on the fact that it gets them in the stream. But I think it's more realistic or feels more realistic to me to be like it's typing. So cool, it did it here. I think another issue that I have in my code is that it's presumably it sent me new line characters. Let's look at the data and we can see. Because here in my formatting, it did not format any new lines. But if we look at the completions and we shrink that, here's the response. Okay, so it backslashed out the quotes. Oh yeah, here's the new line right here. So it did try to send me a new line character, and I just ignored it. But that's cool that it was even sending me the formatting. And it gave me some pretty cool suggestions here. Creating a GPT-powered chatbot step-by-step guide. I mean, I guess in some ways I've done that. In a lot of ways, no. But anyways, it's done some cool titles here. I'm going to copy these and save these for later reading because this is the first time I've had GPT-4 do anything like this for me. But yeah, that was pretty cool too. So I'm pretty impressed with that, I would say. And I'd say that I think we tested it for the most part. Like I could do back and forth all day with it. Like I used to ask it to do Rick and Morty scripts and stuff like that. But I think we've done enough on the testing. Let's take a look at the billing and see if any of this is updated. And what the damage is, basically. Okay, yeah, so this little stuff we just played with, that was 13 cents, basically. Probably 1 cent or so was DALL-E. Oh, wait, did we even do the DALL-E stuff in the end? Oh, yeah, we did. We got that not-so-good-looking teddy bear, didn't we? Yeah, we got the Stable Diffusion one was better for free. But yeah, so there's 13 cents right there. That gives you an idea for what it is. And yeah, I think with that, we can probably call it a day on the video. And I hope that's helped you learn how to make your own chatbot. And if you like my video, please throw me a like. If you want to motivate me and keep track of what I'm doing and see my next video, then please subscribe. And thanks for checking out this video. See you in the next one.